Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe's Classic Video Games, back with another cool pinball repair video for you today. Look what we have. This is a Williams Lucky 7 pinball machine. Early solid state Williams stuff. I've never had this particular game. I've never even played it. Can't wait. We actually own this one. We bought this a while back and we are going to fix it up. Now, we're going to do a few things different than we usually do them here. First of all, the Playfield was in pretty nice shape already. Someone had cleaned it not too long ago. So I had Joe clean it up, put new rubbers on it, all that. So we're not going to do a video where we do our usual tear down of the Playfield because it doesn't really need it. I'll show you why here in a minute. And then second of all, we have a customer, Mr. James, who has had us repair some of his stuff in the past, and he sent us some of his boards that I believe will fit right in this Williams System 6, maybe this is. It's either a 4 or a 6. And we're going to use this machine to test his boards and repair them. So whenever we work through the boards, we're going to be working through several sets of them. So that should be cool. This thing's in pretty good shape. It's got a few issues, like that big crack on the side. I don't know how that happened. We didn't do it. But Lucky 7 must be some kind of gambling theme. Kind of generic art, you know, just dots. Kind of ripping off a 7-Up logo to me. Yellow and green. I mean, come on. And orange. Come on. I mean, come on, people. Come on. It's like 7. Look, it's got this 7. There's no P, but it's 7. Come on, people. Come on, you see what it is. Cool looking game though. I really like the ones that look old. Like I like the ones that look out of date. This one kind of looks out of date. Looks like it's from the 70s. I love it. You know, if it's from the 70s, it ought to look like it's from the 70s, and this one does. Look at the holes here. Somebody had a big old lock on it, apparently. They must have had like a big clasp on it so nobody could break in and get those quarters. I don't blame them. I like keeping all my quarters. Let's check out the back glass. Looks pretty good, unilluminated. It has a little bit of scratching there. But, you know, it's all so dark and so busy, I don't know that we're going to touch any of it up. For whatever reason, on the Williams ones, I usually don't touch them up. I don't know why. It's just, they look different to me. I don't know who the artist was. Look, it says Lucky 7 SS, which would stand for solid state. So there may have been an EM version of this. Then it says copyright, and there is no copyright date. Williams Electronics, Inc. Got a little bit of something going on down there, too. So you got the girl in the middle. You got a whole bunch of people playing games, and they look absolutely just thrilled at her performance. So this woman here, look at her. And this woman's looking on with adoring eyes. And then look at this girl. Boy, she looks happy. Now look at this guy. Look at him. He's just thrilled. That's how I looked whenever they brought the machine in. I said, oh boy! Now people, you may not know this about me. I'm not one to be critical. I can see where some people would not like this art as well as some of the other art. But I like it, man. I think it's cool. It's a whole different style. Like, it's kind of, it's slightly more, what's the best way to put it without insulting whoever the artist was? I don't know. It's just a little bit, on this stuff back here, it's a little bit more goofy. Like, it's just a little more, I like it. I like it. It's a different look than the Bally stuff. So you got a couple girls here. Now at this time, Bally was straight up freaking, I mean, this is like 1977. Bally was straight up, you know, putting Playboy pictures on the back glass. If I got a Bally here, I don't have one. They've picked up all of her Bally's. I got a $6 million man, but there's nothing crazy on it. But it's just a little more soft. A little more free-flowing. So I'll show you what I mean. So, you got that. I do have this one Bally, like I said, it's a $6 million man. You can see how it's a different thing, you know. This is more serious. It's more like comic book style. I don't know. You get what I'm talking about. It's a different artist. But I like it. Very cool. And then you have a little band back here doing their thing. And you have the showgirls back here. And then, you know, she doesn't look goofy or anything. But let me show you some of the ones on the Playfield. This is more like the traditional pinball art from like the 50s and the 60s. That's a little more how they would do that. And I'm not just talking about like the clothes she's wearing. I'm just talking about the way it's drawn. That's just a little more the traditional way that they did it. And I don't think it's a limitation of the artist. I think it was just a conscious decision that he wanted, or she wanted, it to look like that. I don't know what this girl's doing. She's doing the chicken. Look, she's doing it too. So it's a like a casino type theme. That one's done well. It's a casino type theme, and the reason that the Playfield is still in pretty good shape is somebody has put Mylar all over it. Now, if you've watched our videos, you know how we feel about Mylar. We don't really like it, but we don't like to remove it either. But whoever put this Mylar on, they did it right. They cleaned the Playfield and then put the Mylar on. That's all you got to do, people. Just clean it before you do it. So there is wear on the Playfield, and then there is a Mylar sheet over it. But they got the wear pretty clean. Now, they didn't get it completely clean, but you can't really get it any cleaner than that. You know, if I went on that with a magic eraser, if the Mylar wasn't on it and I hit that with a magic eraser, it wouldn't really clean up. They could have maybe painted some of that in, but the wear is just light enough that I think they did a really good job. Like, this is very presentable. I'm not real picky about that stuff, but if I was collecting them, I'd be happy to have this one. I mean, I think this is in great shape. But it's like that all over the Playfield. So see, there is wear, and they've covered it with Mylar, but they did a really good job of cleaning it before they put the Mylar down. I wouldn't have put the Mylar. I would have just left it how it was and waxed the hell out of it. But it is what it is. Now here, you can see there's some damage to the Playfield there. And they put the Mylar right over it. But again, it's clean, so I think it works just fine. It's probably going to be better for the ball too, because I can feel, you can see that it's concave. But the Mylar is going to lessen that, so the ball will roll more straight. Sometimes, whenever they have these windows in them, you have to get it perfectly smooth so that the ball doesn't hit it and chip the paint, but that feels pretty smooth. So the Playfield is in very good shape, but like I said, Joey took it apart, cleaned it, waxed it, put it all back together. So we just didn't have anything to paint or anything, so it ended up looking really good. So you got the cool kind of 70s show plastics on it, showgirl plastics, the show lights, whatever. I wasn't around in the 70s. Or I was for a little while, but I sure as hell wasn't going to any strip shows in Vegas, so I didn't I didn't catch any of this. But I'd imagine that's how it looked. This is like Liberace, but with chicks. It's just like that. It's just like Liberace, but with chicks. And it looks like Williams went out of their way to make some new score reels. That's pretty cool. So we'll see how that ends up playing. But yeah, I think this is going to be a really cool one. So let me pop up the Playfield and let's see what it looks like underneath the hood. All right, so not a ton going on underneath it. You know, they had a bill of materials back in the day. You could only put so much stuff in a game. But you've got two independent drop targets, one on each side. And then you've got 3 additional score reels in the bottom. Now keep in mind, this is a solid state game. So there are no score reels in the back box. They've got them under the Playfield instead. So kudos to them for even thinking about that. You know, they're trying to move to solid state. And so now they've got game boards, they've got digital displays, they have chimes in this particular one, right? But the designer, whoever designed this game, said, hey, let me put some of the old EM reels down at the bottom of it. That'll be cool. So very cool. I would imagine if there is an EM version of this, which I guess there probably is. I've never seen one, but if there is an EM version, it must have score reels in the back and score reels under the Playfield. That'd be crazy. So yeah, that's about it. So it's just going to be a shooting game, and it's going to focus around those score reels in the middle, I guess. And I suppose at this time, since it's one of the early solid states, that in itself was a draw to get people to play it. It's a digital game, so people are going to be like, heck yeah, let's try it out. Nice and clean. It's got 4 chimes, and it's got the buzzer. Something on the Bally ones, they called that the over-the-top buzzer. When you went over 100,000 points, that went off. So we'll see what it does in this one. It's probably when you win a free ball or something. And there's the knocker. So yeah, everything looks clean, and it has the original manual down in it. Check that out. Very cool. All right, so let me get the back glass out of there, and let's peek inside the back box. Here's our back glass, and aha! The Mylar strikes again. We have a Mylar bandit on the loose, and they're putting that crap on everything. But that's cool. We usually paint them to seal them, but it kind of depends on what's going on. These are scratches. So that's not going to flake or get any worse if you stop scratching the hell out of it. Now, why would it be scratched? It's because a lot of times these displays will hang down, and then the display itself, so you can imagine that here's the numbers. You see how wide that is? It's slightly wider than the numbers. So here's the display that shows the numbers. You can see the scratches are slightly wider than that. You know, that's the display. The glue will dry and it'll hang forward, and then when you put the thing in, it'll scratch the glass. So this isn't because of heat damage or it was stored improperly or anything like that. It's because they literally were scratching the hell out of it whenever they were pulling it out of the game or whenever that display was slapping against it. Looks like same thing over there. And so at the bottom, it looks like they did have a little bit of flaking. So right here, right here. And so they've went through and they covered with Mylar the stuff that had actually been damaged. This stuff, yeah, it's damaged, but it's a physical damage. This is stuff that heat did or water did. I'll show you that in a minute. Somebody mentioned not too long ago, and it was a great point in one of our videos, that a lot of times these things will start getting damaged from the bottom up, and the theory is it's because people would clean them over the years, so they'd spray Windex on the glass, and then the Windex would go down and get caught in the metal channel at the bottom of the glass, and then that paint would sit in that Windex until it evaporated, and it would leach it up into the paint, and that's why you get problems on the bottom of the glass. And I think that's probably right. That makes complete sense to me. Okay, so let's look inside. That is what they call the master display, and they call these the slave displays, mainly because this one, it processes all the information with the ICs, and these slave ones just have like a little glass on them, and they're literally just the glass soldered to a board with a connector. No chips or anything on it. Okay. It's not uncommon anymore for one of those to be bad, so we might end up with one of those displays out or something. But that can be fixed. We're going into the tomb. So in a lot of the games, the soundboard would be up here, but this is before the soundboard. They're still using chimes. You saw them in the bottom. Here's the power supply. Very sparse. I keep forgetting that to the people that don't mess around with this older tech, that these big, huge boards probably blow their mind. That's just the power board. And so all it's doing is, this is like a 5-volt rectifier. And then some of these just pass through a couple of these fuses. And then this is the voltage for the displays. This is just a real simple little rectifier for displays. So it's one of those is plus 100 volts and one of those is minus 100 volts. But it's just a simple little power supply, but with a huge freaking board. So the power comes up. This is a transformer under here. It goes through a couple bridge rectifiers. One makes the voltages for the lights. One makes the voltages for the solenoids. And then those voltages pass through the board, go through a fuse, and then out to do their thing. And like I said, this is the 5, and this is the displays. So all of that powers the MPU. There's a 12 somewhere, but I think it's just, I don't know how they rectify that. But you get 12 and 5 over to the MPU. It does its thing. I still don't know what system this is. 3 or 4, I guess. I've abandoned that it's system 6. I don't think it is, but maybe. And then this is the famous driver board. So there's 2 different boards, and they're connected together with this big connector here. So we're going to work through these, like I said, along with our buddies' boards too, while we do them. Oh, it's worth mentioning the batteries too. So the batteries would have mounted here originally, but someone has removed them. I see no battery damage. They've added sockets for all of the ROMs, which is good. Well, originally it would have had sockets, but I mean, they've replaced them. And then they have made a battery pack, it looks like, by soldering batteries together. That may be some kind of holder. Oh yeah, I think it's a holder. So there's batteries in here, which is cool, because if that leaks and the batteries start leaking, it'll take a while for the alkaline to get up to the main board. But it will still get to the main board. Basically, if you leave it long enough, it will eat through the freaking wires and get up to the board and start eating it. You wouldn't think that's possible, but it is. Okay, so I'm going to put this glass somewhere where it won't get broke, and then we're going to turn the damn thing on and see if anything blows up. We'll just see what kind of shape we're in to begin with. Okay, I plugged it up. We're going to turn it on and see if she does anything to start with. Now, these Williams games, they boot up different than the Bally's. They don't have a boot up sequence. Or they kind of do. You saw the lights came on and then blinked off. That's about it. So we got a couple lights on the Playfield. Let's see if any of the displays are on. Boop, boop, boop. Well. Things up and playing. Or booted, at least. It's not playing necessarily, but came right up. So what are we looking at? This light, I think, says game over. This one says high score to date or something like that. When it goes off, it shows the last score. That's the high score to date, which is just the generic pre-programmed score. The batteries apparently are still working. If we had just played a game, that wouldn't say 0. It would say whatever the last game was. One of the difference between the Bally's and the Williams games too is that Bally's had just 2 zeros lit up, but Williams, they would have all of the zeros lit up. It's just how the thing was programmed. The 21 is going to be how many credits are on it, and the 0 is what ball is in play. So yeah, thing's up and running. Let's try it. I don't have a ball in it, though. Let me go get a new pinball. New pinball. Somebody was asking on a previous video if we ever just clean the pinball off, because we had that one that had rust all over it. No, not usually. We might wipe one down or something if it's got fingerprints on it, but in general, whenever we get them, the things have been sitting around for a long time, so they're ready for a new pinball. And a new pinball is like $3 or $2, so we splurge. Went ahead and put that new pinball in there. And this isn't a multi-ball game, so it only needs one ball, so it's worth $2 to keep from eating up your playfield. So put new pinballs in them often. Now the ones that are like highly polished and all that, it's a complete gimmick. Don't buy those. Just buy regular pinballs. They're just ball bearings. So you don't need the ones that are highly polished unless that's what you want. And if that's what you want, you do you. But we put the cheap ones in there. $2, baby. If it was good enough in 1977 when this came out, why the hell wouldn't I still use one? Huh? I didn't hear anybody arguing it. So let's see if she'll start. It's got a bunch of credits on it. 21. Says 20. Lights are moving, but the ball didn't pop out. Okay, so we're kind of working. It's sort of working. Now, notice we didn't hear any chimes either. The reason for that is because they're ran on solenoids too. So the kicker is a solenoid. It doesn't work. The chimes didn't work. Right? There's a drop target down. You know it's probably supposed to reset that at the beginning of the game. That didn't work. So the solenoids aren't working. There might be a blown fuse or something, but that's all very fixable. Okay, so we're going to do it the way we usually do it. We're going to, like I said, this is our machine, so we're going to fix it up and then sell it. Right? But we're going to play it a lot first. Don't worry about it. So we need to make it more reliable so that long term it'll work good for whoever we sell it to. Okay, so the first thing we're going to work through, like we always do, we're going to service all the boards. On this one, that means all three of them, and the playfield and all that. So the first thing we're going to do is mess with the power supply. We always kind of try to do it in order. So the power comes in from the wire, runs to the transformer, and then runs to here. Okay, so this thing is working just fine. You just saw it. Everything's working cool. But it has these old capacitors on it. Has these old diodes on it. So we're going to update a little bit of that. We're not going to go nuts with it, but we're going to do the things that we know help it out long term. We're going to keep this one separate. This is the original one from it. 14096. I don't know if the serial numbers match. But we've got other ones we're going to mess with because our buddy James sent them to us. So these are out of a flash. Let me see what we got here. Okay. So this is his power supply out of his flash. You can see that they're very similar. But this one has a little bit more in it. It has these two capacitors here. I believe they removed those in later versions. So I think this is just an older version of this. Let's see what else is different. I'm looking, I'm checking it out. That's it. That's all that's different. So these two capacitors here, I'm pretty sure that they originally just did away with those. So while this one doesn't have those, this is actually the newer version. I think. I may have that wrong. There's two diodes here too that aren't on this one, but I don't know if those are for the caps or not. We'll look into that. So it looks as if this has already been rebuilt. He just wants us to look at it and see, check everything out, because his flash isn't working and he's trying to get it working. So that's what we're going to do. So someone has replaced the capacitors, and we're going to do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, these two are in the display section, like we were talking about. So yeah, I need to find out about these, but So once this has been done, it doesn't really need to be redone, you know. So we'll test it and make sure its voltages and everything are all right. But you don't really need to replace this capacitor that's already been replaced, nor this one, nor those two. So I'm not going to replace those and charge him for new caps whenever he honestly doesn't need them. We probably will replace these two diodes though, because those are known to go bad. They get leaky. Okay, so let me replace my caps on mine first, and then we'll flip it over and look at the back side of them. Okay, so these are 100 microfarad, 100 volts. I think these are 150s, but I just replace all of them with 160 volts. I don't see a date code. I think they're original. And then this was the big 5-volt filter cap. It looked like it had been replaced at some point, but this thing's ancient. And I accidentally broke the pin off anyway. So I put a nice new one. It's a 12,000 microfarad, 16 volt. I put a 12,000 25 volt. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to brush off. I have a little paintbrush I use, like a duster. Dust off all of your solder pins on your connectors and replace those, like resolder those. So let's see if we can tell if any of them have bad solder. Let me see if I can eyeball it. That one on the end there, see it? See it? That ain't right. That needs to be reflowed, people. You see it, don't you? You see it now, don't you? Look at that one on that end. Look at it. See it right there? That ain't right. See how there's a little ring at the base of the post? That's where it's broken loose over time. See how this one don't look very good? So, it'll work probably, but maybe not for long. Look at that one. Do you see how the post isn't really touching the pool of solder around it? And there's perhaps our best example. That's what we call a double ringer. It's a double ringer, people. So whatever wire connects there may have not been doing what it's supposed to. So yeah, I'm going to resolder all that, and I'm also going to do that on James's board, unless he already has. Let's see if he has. We're checking up on you, James. They resoldered a couple, but they didn't do them all. It's always the ones on the ends, because you go to pull the plug off, and you do this. And when you do, it puts all kinds of pressure on that last pin. You're bending it, grinding that crap off of there. So it's always the last pin on one side or the other. Look at that one. Suspect. Alright, so we're going to reflow those. You can also do like those, but they're usually not as bad, because when you pull those off, they're more supported, because there's like 10 pins holding it. Whenever you pull it, if you pull the plug off, you're flexing 4 of them at the same time. So that's next. So on both boards, I pulled out those diodes. Now these say on them 7932, which is the 32nd week of 1979. And then the actual part number is P300A. From what I understand, it's like a 3 amp diode. And that's what filters the voltage that makes the 12 volt and the 5 volt. Or not filters, regulates. So that's a little low. So we replace them with 6 amp diodes. So these are 6A4s. They're just beefier. They can take more juice. Replace both sets. Get those nice and beefy. Upgrading diodes, people. By the way, we learned all of this from Clay at pinrepair.com. If you go to pinrepair.com, Clay, he used to, I don't know if he took them down, I don't know if he put them back up, but he had extensive repair things for like all types of pinball machines. So that's where we got all of this and how we started doing it. Next up, we're over in the display section now. We've already replaced the caps. We're going to replace the 1N4764, I think it is, diodes, which are the 100 volt Zener diodes. We're going to do that on both of them, and I'll show you what we pull out. Okay, so next we are replacing these two diodes, which are 1N4764s. Now, a lot of people say those are 100 volt Zener diodes. .3 watt. 1N4764. A lot of people replace those with 1N4763s, which are 91 volt diodes, and it lowers the 100 volts to 91 volts. And the reason they do that is because it sends less power to the displays and theoretically burns them less, so they last longer, because the displays eventually do burn up. Okay. The only problem is, though, some of the displays won't run on less than 100 volts. Once it drops down a little bit, the displays will flicker and all that. So I don't mess with it. I just put the regular ones in. Now, I do replace them, even though they were still working, because these things are problematic. They will blow up. I've seen a bunch of them go out. So since they're an issue, I usually replace them with new ones. So we've got brand new ones in. 1N4764s. You might want to do 4763s on yours if you want to play that game. Here's our one that's actually going in the Lucky 7. So that's that. Okay. So next up, we're going to mess with the resistors a little bit up here in that area. There's two of them that you're supposed to upgrade. And then there's two of them that are 39K that we need to test to see if they're off spec. So let me grab a multimeter. So these two resistors right here, this one and this one, are 680 ohm. And Williams apparently sent out something telling you to upgrade that to a 1.2K ohm. So nearly doubling it in size. So I don't know why that would be. Let's look at the schematic real quick and maybe we can figure out what they were doing. I won't be able to, but maybe you will be able to. So here are the schematics. There are two identical circuits, or pretty much identical. One creates 100 volts and one creates a negative 100 volts, okay? So on both of these you have the voltage coming in. There's that capacitor up at the top that we were looking at. There is Z1, which I'm not even sure what that is, and a 39K resistor. We're going to check that out, 2-watt resistor. And then there is the two transistors, and here's that resistor. So they suggested changing that from 680 to 1200. So I did that. Here's the Zener diode that's 100 volt that some people say to make 91 volts. Okay. And then here's another little capacitor. And here's a 330K resistor to create the outputs. So I don't know why they changed that from 680 to 1200, but maybe you do. Now here are the extra caps that I was saying they got rid of. Here's one, there's another one over here, and then the two diodes. The reason that they have that is because it creates a special negative 300 volt line. Oh, that sounds fun. So keep in mind, the one I have in the Lucky 7 doesn't have those, and the game was up and running with the displays running. The one in the Flash has them. But as I understand it, they got rid of this after Lucky 7. So we're looking at the Lucky 7 manual, and it does show it. So it should be in the Lucky 7. So let's see if we can figure out what they would use that for in the displays. So here's the power connector on the displays. You see the plus 100 volts, plus 5, ground, and negative 100. And then, ironically, they call the negative 300 volt the keep alive voltage. So these are plasma displays. So it goes down to here, and then over to here. And it connects to the keep alive pin on each display through a 3 meg resistor, pin 15. Okay. Whatever that means. Okay, so let's, yeah, runs to all of them. Let me look at the same setup on a Flash and see how they ran it without that. So on the later ones, they just decided to run it off the negative 100. So I guess the keep alive voltage will work as a negative 100 or negative 300. But it works the exact same way. So we don't, well, I don't know. I guess we don't need the one with the little caps on it because we don't need the negative 300 volts because it was up and running fine without it. But I'm going to plug the other guy's board into ours to see. I'll see if I can measure that negative 300 and see if his really is putting that out. But yeah, so there you go. Okay, so we're getting finished up here. These two resistors are supposed to be 39K 2-watt resistors, and they're often off spec. So both of mine were, so I swapped them, brand new resistors. Did the same on this board. Both of them didn't measure within spec. So these two were 820s. We replaced them with 1.2K. These were 39K. We replaced them with brand new ones, 2-watt. And I tested these with a diode test between the legs. Everything's fine. Tested these with the diode test between the legs. Everything's fine. Of course, we know those are fine because that's the board that was actually up and running. Okay. So once you've done that, you've basically rebuilt the high voltage with the exception of these two, but I tested them with the diode check. Everything's cool. And then I tested these two diodes with the diode check. Everything's cool. Okay. We replaced the cap down here. We replaced this cap. We replaced these two diodes. The only thing left is your 5-volt regulator. We know this one works. Okay. It's supposed to be an LM323. But a problem that people make sometimes is they'll replace it with the wrong part. So this particular one, this power supply, it looks like someone had rebuilt and replaced a bunch of the stuff. You saw it has the new capacitors and etc. And it had this in it. This is a 2N6057. And you see the date code is 2005, the 41st week of 2005. So it's a 2N6057. That's what's used in a System 7 power supply. Completely different setup. So this won't work in this board. So our buddy James, this is probably what was wrong with his Flash. He didn't tell me what it was doing. He just sent me all the boards. So we're gonna work through them a little bit. But that definitely would have kept the 5 volts from working, which would have kept everything from working. And it may have blown fuses and all kinds of stuff. So I swapped it out with an LM323, and it tests like it's good. I'm going to check the fuses to make sure they're the proper value, and then we're ready to put this one in our machine and test it. Now, when I plug it up, I'm going to have everything unplugged except the input voltages, because you don't want to plug an untested board, especially one you just figured out had the wrong voltage transistor on it. Voltage regulator on it. You don't want to plug this in and, it's sending out, instead of 5 volts, it's sending out 12 volts or something. It'll fry everything connected to it. So we ain't going out like that, right? So I'm going to go plug this in with the connectors unplugged, and we'll test the voltages and make sure this one's all right before we hook everything up. Okay, so all the fuses check out. This one I don't think you actually need. That's the general illumination. I think they moved it off board on them. But this is our solenoid fuse on the power supply that came with the Lucky 7, and it was blown. So remember, none of our solenoids were working. The ball wasn't kicking out. The chimes weren't working. That's blown. That would definitely do it, but something may have blown it, so we're going to have to keep our eye on that. But we're going to test his first, and then we'll swap ours in. So this is the flash board from our buddy James. We've got the inputs going in, right? And I don't have anything plugged in because I don't want the outputs going out, so we don't fry anything. And then a little trick you can do is you can put an empty socket, an empty connector socket on the pins, because the problem you have is if I'm trying to check a couple pins right next to each other, bzzz, right? So we're on ground and 5. We've got 5.06. Now the 12 is real low, but I think I ran into that on the last one that I did too. I think it just does that when nothing's connected to it. There's no load, so it's at 9.84, and I think that's all that you can check on this connector. Yes, that is true. Okay, so here comes the fun one. 300 volts, baby. 300 volts. Won't that be fun? So instead of probing for ground, I think I'll just grab a ground on the edge of the board there. Alright, so the power, this is the connector that goes to the display. It's very important. 5 volts. -101 volts, -101 volts, and the suicide volt, -406 volts. Holy crap! Why would they do that? We don't need that. Let's see here. So that voltage, yep, doesn't even connect to anything. It's pin 2. There is no wire even populated in pin 2. Completely unnecessary. It's just there to give you a buzz. Let's see, I've got to do my same little trick. I usually do this two-handed, people, but since you're here bothering me, 20 volts for the solenoids, and these down here I think are general illumination connectors. Okay, so I think we're good. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to plug it up and let it rip. So we're going to turn it on, but remember the solenoid fuse was blown on our board, so it very well may blow on this board. If I hear a coil lock on, I'm turning it right back off. No coil locked on. The lights came on and went back off. We're up and running, but the lights aren't working. What happened there? Did I forget to plug something in? No, looks right. We had a couple lights on before, remember? And then we had the one blinking on the back box. Well, seems as if it's up. Let's see if it'll start when the other one wouldn't. So on this one, the solenoids are working, but not the lights. That should be something simple, though. I don't even know that would Well, it has to go through the power supply. Okay, let's see if we can figure out why our lights are out. I'm gonna turn it off, and because we didn't change any of this, you know. Got our lights back, easy peasy. It's the 8 amp fuse, and it was just a bad connection on the fuse holder. So I took the fuse out, cleaned the fuse holder a little better, put the fuse back, and it came right up. Okay, so yeah, with that power supply, everything's up and running, and the solenoids work. Look, folks, we'll fix it. I mean, I know that's not that great. Boy, the chimes sound horrible. They really need some work. All right. So his power supply works fine. I'm going to take it back out. I'm going to put our power supply in and get it back how it was just to make sure our power supply is fine too. And we replaced that fuse in our power supply, so it should have the solenoids working as well. So let me swap them back. We'll go ahead and mark that power supply as working good. All right, so we got our swap back in there, and it is up and running. I tested the voltages. Everything was cool. Check it out. So it's up, but it needs some work, some serious work, but it seems like it is starting. Let's see if it'll start with that power supply. It's gonna be fun, but it ain't fun yet. The top rollovers change the lane. I mean, change the real value. Good chimes are really going to help it a lot. We get those chimes killing it, and it'll be a much better game just from that. Almost got the spinner. Alright, so there you go. Make sure to leave your comments below. Next time we'll work on the MPU a little bit because we got to fix the other ones. So we're going to use this as our test bed. And you can bench test those, but isn't it more fun to put it in an actual machine? Of course it is. So leave your comments below. Let us know what you think. Make sure to give us a thumbs up for taking the trouble to film it for you. And we appreciate everybody that's been using our Amazon links. If you don't know about that, there's a link down below to Amazon. If you go to Amazon and you're going to buy anything, you know, especially around this time of year, click our link first. By just doing that, all you got to do is click it. You don't have to sign up for anything. Just use our link to go to Amazon. It gives us about 3% of whatever you buy. Wow. So people have been doing that lately, and we really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone that's been doing that. Some crazy people out there have even bookmarked one of our links, and then every time they go to Amazon, they just use that as their bookmark. Wow. That's all I got to say. So we appreciate everybody that's been doing that. And make sure, last but not least, to check out my brother Donnie. My brother Donnie is literally my brother here on YouTube. He has his own channel. If you like watching us work on these old pinball machines, you may enjoy watching us work on old buildings. He has a couple old buildings that we've bought in a small town near here that we're fixing up, trying to help revitalize their downtown area. And a fun time is had by all. So we'll see you over there on that channel. But we'll see you back real soon for the next video in this one where we do the MPUs. Talk to you in the